Okay, this is part one of July 7th, outcome-based massage targeting relaxation. And
Got it.
we're on.
Ta-da. All right, so there she is. So we talked about this very important, and I think it's fun that you came up with this first, this very important concept around relaxation as our foundation of us being present, us doing whatever it takes, and for me, I just had I had to set the table up. That was so routine for me, and I'd done it so much that cleaning the table and putting the sheets on and all that kind of stuff just became how I would settle down. The hand washing, all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have to be, you know, it can be part of how you get yourself into your work day, kind of a thing. A uniform has always been important to me, because that is, when I'm in casual clothes, I'm something else. When I'm a massage therapist, I have a uniform on. And that speaks to my habituation. It makes a huge difference. So a lot of people like to work in casual clothes, or they'll do the thing, that's to this or to that or to the other thing. But I have found overall that if you wear a uniform, that you are going to settle. You're going to settle into that role. Now, it doesn't have to be scrubs, but they're easy. They're generally comfortable, and so, and it speaks to a perception of the general public. This is therapeutic because people who are therapeutic wear scrubs. Okay?
And the mindfulness piece, I just want to always
Yeah.
chirp in with something. I'm a big believer in, even if you know you're trying to do this to yourself, that's okay. Even if you know you're saying, I'm going to very methodically put this table together and that's going to ground me. Saying that internally is okay. You don't have to be unaware that you're telling yourself you want to be grounded and present. So if you do things like this mindfully, being mindfully, but being aware of what you're trying to accomplish, you're trying to gear yourself to being locked into the moment so you can kind of be your best self and perform your best service, right? So, that goes a long way of just kind of knowing what your outcome and goal is. Even with that, I'm just getting ready for the day.
Especially if you're moving from person to person. Most of you, maybe you don't know, but anyway, it's been about 16 years now, it's been that long. I ended up having open heart surgery. And so I've been recently going through a series of cardiac checkup. Nothing's wrong, but every once in a while I need to do that. Not as often as I would like, but anyway, so I've been going through all that. And I was observing the cardiologist, who's been around a long time. He's been in practice, whatever, he's my age actually. And I watched him come in and settle himself down. He had to fiddle with this, and he opened the file and he did some things. And then I could see him click right in. Okay, now I'm talking to somebody. And I thought, God, that's really cool. And then when he left, I was right behind him, and I watched him. He grabbed the file out of the next door that he was going to go in, and he very deliberately walked back and forth a couple of times, and he had the file open, and he was looking through the file, and then he stood in front of the door. It was so cool to watch. He stood in front of the door, he took a deep breath, and there he was. He was there at that moment 100% for them. And so it really is a practiced thing that you do. And even if your life is a disaster, the washers broke, the cat puked on the floor, whatever. you'd be surprised about, like Luke said, the habituation will help you be able to move into that space. Okay, what else? Yes.
Well, I was just gonna say, as a yoga teacher, I've had to do that. I've
Yes.
had to leave one huge dynamic and go to the next, and I've had to schedule at least an hour for myself to get into this zone.
Yep.
And I have a whole routine too,
Yep.
because if I don't, I'm just not, I'm thinking a million things and I'm not giving the service that, you know, I need to give. So I have to have at least an hour to just not even talk to anybody,
Yes.
just get in my zone. So it's interesting that you
And
said
I
that.
wanted to even the secondarily reinforce too, because this will help surmise even a component for the client's outcome. This is about like you getting ready, but the ambiance. These are controllable, objective things that you can always have available. You can always control, you know, how the person's feeling that day and all these other peripheral things, but simple things like
They're gonna tell us those things.
Yeah, you're stealing our stuff.
I'm just saying you control the ambiance.
Yeah.
And any of that works for you and them at the same time.
Yes, it does.
So for me, it wasn't just that, but it was like lighting and music goes a long way. Lighting and music, I didn't get to be in the same room, ever. But lighting and music went a long way. A lamp and music, ambiance. And that helped a ton.
I remember when we had the school program with the Detroit Pistons, because we've had school programs with the Detroit Lions and all, this was specific to the Pistons. I don't know if you were around for this particular set, but we were still at the Palace down here in Pontiac. And we were all over the place on where we worked. Sometimes we worked in the storage closet. And Luke had found this ratty old lamp.
Yep. The only lamp in the whole facility, everything else is fluorescence.
So he had this lamp, and he had music on his phone.
Had to be Native American, like warrior. You know, you can't get too spotty.
And I swear that as soon as that lamp was turned on, that music was turned on, that place turned into a whole different, even when we were in the closet. You remember that, Karen?
I don't know if it was that exact day, but I know your phone was always on.
And the lamp. I forgot about the lamp. Okay, so what else did you come up with?
So, breathing. So,
Keep going.
lighting.
All of
Lighting.
that can be as simple as just, you put your arm in their muscle and you go, you know, and you just breathe out and then you're there. You know, I mean, it can be that simple or it can be more complex.
Yeah.
Lengthier.
We have the sounds, smells, heat, weighted blanket, sheet, the texture of the sheets,
That's a good catch right there, yeah.
Keep going.
CBD oils and creams, different lotions, fresh airflow, and then just the visual atmosphere as a whole.
Good. All right, group 2.
We had setting expectations, like what to take off and leave on, how the client will start, so, you know, front, sideline, back, draping, especially if there are new clients, so they understand that they're not gonna be spread eagle naked, you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
just that it'd be covered up. We had, can you say temperature already?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Another add-on, essential oils. Checking in on pressure. So when you start giving them like a light, medium, heavy pressures to see what they like, and then making sure that they know that the pressure can change throughout. I mean, at input and massage, and they should talk to us about that. So, and then checking in with them, like, do you need more or less pressure? If they have allergies, making sure you know so that you're using the appropriate cream if they need something like that. And then what else? We had something about, again, ambiance, like maybe having a water feature.
I'll tell you a story about water features. So, I got a couple stories about water features. I worked with basketball player, the only quiet place in the house was in the basement in the furnace room. And so our water feature there was anytime the toilet flushed. And so when we branded, when you do like with Massage Green and it's a brand, when you become a franchisee, you buy the brand. You're paying for permission to use the brand. And one of they brand the environment mostly, is what they brand. And so, we were required to put the waterfalls in that are over there. And if you haven't seen the waterfalls on a break walk, go take a look at the water. I had a fit, cause they're really expensive. And I am not big on fussing, I'm not a fusser. I'm, so I was snarky about having to put the money into these waterfalls, but it was just part of the thing, and sometimes you just have to do stuff because it's part of the thing, right? One of the things we get complimented most on are the waterfalls. They notice that there's something inherently peaceful and important and all that. So it was interesting that now those actually are silicone that run through there, but the
Silicone
sound.
fluid, she's saying, not water.
Yeah, so it's not water, it's a
A lot of
silicone.
people like to touch them. They're like, "What is this?" And they're touching them. I'm like, "Oh, that's not
Yeah,
water."
it-
They're
it-
like,
But now there's something to be said for, again, a lot of this has to do with, even if it's not that, but like color tones, like what choice, if you do have like a stationary office, what color do you paint the walls, things like that. Even, the color palette, I mean, anything you can take to color therapy and or aromatherapy, you can easily access that to incorporating into the ambiance of the environment, which goes a long way. And something like this is just, you really are stepping into a whole different world. It's like, okay, yeah, there isn't. So I think it's a bit of a shocker. One thing I wanted to hone in on with what was said was the really establishing good communication channels with the client, especially first-time clients. It goes a long way, having as much of these conversations regarding what to expect during the session prior to them getting on the table is very helpful in preempting and avoiding any kind of anxiety they're gonna have, whether it be related to the draping, positioning, the key one's gonna be like sideline, nobody's ever experienced sideline, realistic expectations, things like that. And also, in my opinion, I tend to really chirp at reinforcing a person's sense of vigilance and capacity to keep going. Like, it's a massage. They're not necessarily gonna come off the table feeling like they're brand new, perfect all over again. I hope that that's true. But there's a lot of we all have something, right? So it's also not honing too strongly in on like the negative piece and be like, well, this other ankle's working great. So even if we just keep that doing well, that'll help you, continue to do the things that you need to do. So everything from helping them understand what to expect during the session, and even charting people's expectations. It's always gonna be a journey. Nobody's getting through life without some bangs and bruises. And I tend to set people up even for like an extended duration for some. So you hope maybe you're a miracle worker, but everybody needs to be prepared that the healing process is a tedious one, right? So a phrase I've tended to use is taking the scary out of the pain. Let people understand, I just had my girlfriend go get her appendix taken out, right? And I had to calm everybody down about the first week being acute pain. But yes, it's not the most invasive surgery in the world, but it's surgery. It's acute pain. It hurts a lot for a good reason, for a reason that makes perfect sense. Don't worry so much about the pain being bad right now in the first few days afterward. It makes sense. Everybody calm down. If it's still like that in 2 weeks now, I'm gonna worry. But for right now, everybody calm down. That pain makes sense, right? And it's hard for us to always, internally, on the autonomic side, the body is primed that when it hurts, to go into that fawn, fight, or flight component. And with chronic pain, there's a certain level of, like, statements where, like, it's a little bit of, yep, this is a thing, we're managing it, trial and error is the process. And people can't expect it to resolve too quickly, too fast. They have to be kind of locked into the idea that this is gonna be a process.
Anything, yes,
I'll say to people, I'm like, first I say to them, listen, we might get into an area, if it hurts, feels good, that's okay. But if it's too much, let me know, because, and I say to them, you're only gonna be able to release so much. I said, if you think of yourself as an onion, we're gonna peel off layers, but I'm like, your body's gonna heal itself, and I always make that point, bodies heal themselves, you know, so I'm like, we'll
Yeah.
help, but, I say to them, I don't wanna look down and see you grimacing in pain. And about the sideline thing, I am shocked how many clients have never been in sideline, and these are people who've had tons of massages. So a lot of times I'll tell people, I say, we're gonna start you however, or if we're gonna look at hips, we start face up, if they got a shoulder thing and they're on sideline. But I always tell them, we're gonna go this, we're likely to go this, and this. And when I'm draping a lady for the first time in sideline, ladies are clutching their bosom, you know what I mean? So I always drape really carefully in sideline, because you'll see them, they're uncomfortable, because they're not used to having this exposed, you know what I mean? But again, I'm blown away how many people have never been in sideline before.
And I had lost myself, thank you for the pressure thing, when I was talking, I got myself on a tangent. The pain thing I was talking about, that's part of it. There's a case, especially with the athletes I work with, there's a lot of like no pain, no gain, but there's a middle ground. You can't, even for like the deep tissue aggressive work, we can't be going too far. We have to have that verbal communication with pressure level check-in. It can be intense, but it can't be over a certain threshold.
And I warn people,
And
if they're
telling
gonna be
people-
sore,
yeah.
try to warn them.
Try if they potentially, but there's a big thing of even indicating, one, be clear with me that the pressure is too little. If it's too light, that's stimulating too, right? If it's too light and delicate, that's, ticklish would be the best example of this. But for people that really want the deep pressure, you also have to try to decondition them to be like, it doesn't have to be to the
Yeah.
point that you're barely could take anymore. We want the perfect middle ground. It can be intense, but not too much. And some people are more body aware than others.
so
But
there's
if
science.
you go too far one way or the other, too light, too deep, you're not gonna achieve that relaxation response.
So there's science around pressure and quality of pressure and what it does to the nervous system in terms of a general anti-arousal effect. So if you wanna research this more, you might wanna jot down the word deep pressure therapy. Now, they use it most in occupational therapy. But massage has been doing it forever. And, how many recognize the name Temple Grandin? Okay, so she is autistic. She's written some books. She's done a lot of advocacy work. She's got her doctorate in animal husbandry. She's done a lot. But she inadvertently got caught in a cattle handling piece of equipment where it squeezed her from the sides and she felt calm for the first time in her life. She was a kid. So she built herself something called a squeeze machine where the pressure, broad-based, consistent, non-painful, controlled, that she, and it would squeeze her to calm her nervous system. That was then evolved, this was quite a few years ago, it evolved into something now that's called the hug machine. They still use it, and from that has evolved things like the weighted blankets and some other stuff that's being used as an anti-arousal, ability to calm, especially when your nervous system has got itself so primed that it can't bring itself down.
If people feel myself or her work, they're usually mostly surprised by how little lotion, how slow the application is, slow and sustained, compression with some force, like it's not just static, but these are slow, long holds. The slower, the longer. It doesn't look particularly fancy, but for the newbies, that's why there was so much focus early on on just being able to hold a compression, being able to sustain that compression, and using other peripheral stuff like the weighted packs and things like that. If a thunder, what is it? The thunder jacket for the dog. What's it called?
Yeah.
If it works for it, it worked for human too.
Yeah, so, so there's a ton of science around appropriate pressure and what it is and what it means to people and why it works. Now, massage therapy has messed that up in their marketing and their strategies and that sort of thing, with the idea of deep tissue. And this has been going on since the 80s, and that's been long enough to condition the general population into an idea of deep tissue means something, and relaxation means something else. And so unfortunately it's gone to Swedish means just rubbing, and deep tissue means fixing. And it's the deep tissue-ish concept of very focused, intense, compressive, excessive pressure that is causing a lot of burnout in the massage therapy community, because they don't know how, people don't know how to apply this type of pressure that Luke was talking about.
But with that just comes the practice skill of being able to modulate your pressure and to try to make that pretty consistent for that person. It starts with dialoguing with them. And the first session or few, you may have to interface multiple times to confirm that we're staying in that correct middle range. You might have to teach them a little bit of what the correct range of pressure is. With the athletes, it was almost always like, you are grimacing, man. Like,
Yeah.
that's too much. And I would have to frame it that will likely cause us to like phase into something cramping or something like that. I had to be that direct with them. Like, we have to, but you need to start with that interface, chart it accordingly. But that's where the ergonomics piece, interestingly enough, is so important, because if your ergonomics and biomechanics are good, you can modulate your pressure and maintain the homogeneity of that pressure for that person.
And it's
there may be
different.
people that and it's different for every person. I've had giant athletes that are super more tactily sensitive than other people that are more normally sized. But for each person at the nervous system level, there's that dampening effect where the pressure is just right. Not too much, too little, and it may be unique, whether it be doesn't matter if it's fibromyalgia. I've had fibromyalgia clients that need it very superficial on some days, and yet responded very well when I could apply usually firmer, deeper, sustained compression, even if it was on isolated areas. But you gotta do that. Check. Yeah.
And it changes from body spot to body spot, depending upon the density and thickness of the tissues above the bones and where it is adjacent to nerves. And because if you press on a nerve, there's one here that's acupressure points almost always show up over what's called a neurovascular bundle. And if you press on them, they're gonna hurt. So you can find one easy, take your hand, bring your thumb up, see where the crease is at, put your thumb there, your finger right behind it, squeeze, open that, okay? Did you feel that? Okay, there's a nerve under there. There's a neurovascular bundle under there. Now, if you have had acupuncture, they'll stick a needle in that, and it has a very exquisite feel, and a good acupuncturist will move that needle around until they get that little bit of a nervy, burny sensation, and that creates a cascading event through the nervous system. But if it's not done in the correct way, that flinch is gonna reset to vigilance and you've lost your relaxation response. As soon as that person grimaces, as soon as you have poked them, as soon as something has happened around that, you've lost it. Because that's brought them right back up to something dangerous is happening to me.
And even with something like the needle, a component with that is the needle gets put in the spot and then left
Yep.
for a long duration. So the body can acclimate to certain things. There's a certain component where the body usually responds to any kind of stimulus and asking, is it a potential threat? If the stimulus is sustained and the force doesn't increase and the body's able to adapt and assume, okay, somebody's pushing on me, initially maybe things tighten up in response to that compression, but if the compression stays nice and constant, then the body registers, oh, it's not somebody punching me, it's just something squishy. Is that kind of enough of an analogy?
Yeah.
There is a deconditioning to saying to the body, this is safe. This application is safe. And some of even the hyperstimulation analgesia you might get on these sensitive trigger pointing spots, but you sustain the pressure long enough, then the body goes, oh, let's not be as vigilant. And there's a little bit of even training on an area that maybe was injured in the past that keeps on being too vigilant in response to movement. An ankle sprain or something like that is a common one. Somebody sprains something, it hurts, now everything's primed to seize up and guard anytime that tissue has changed shape. It just is registering that it's assuming might as well protect it and do more versus too little.
Well, that's one of the things that we're really gonna hone in on the next class with the idea of pain and mobility, is that your body learns to be on alert, and it has to unlearn that. But we're working with our basic structure here on well-being and relaxation, if a person is flinching, or if they are tightening and enduring, you've negated your response. But that doesn't mean you go lighter. That's what people do. It doesn't mean you jump off. It doesn't, and usually it happens when you move from denser tissue to less padding, like you go from the glutes to up where the ribs are at, and when your stroke is too long. Because if your stroke is too long, you're gonna shift to your front foot. And when you shift to your front foot, instead of hitting that at a 45 degree, you go straight down and you poke them. You poke them against their own ribs or their own side of their leg where there's a bone. There is an absolute skill set of delivering a very solid relaxation massage. It's not fluff and buff. It's a very skilled set of circumstances, and people discount the value and the therapeutic benefit of that general approach, and they too quickly jump into interventions. I'm gonna fix this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do whatever, instead of going, it's probably there for a reason. 2 sessions from now, I'll take a look at that. So this is, and part of the issue with massage education right now is that this is glossed over. The importance and the value of this foundational stuff. People don't learn how to give a really good massage. You've probably heard that. I don't know what you do different, but it looks like you're just doing a massage and it's working, instead of, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna pour this thing on you, and then I'm gonna beat you with this, and then I'm gonna scrape you with that, and then I'm gonna,
But as a beginner though, I just want to reinforce establishing that communication channel. Because even as you're coming out of this, and 6 months, year from now, you still are going to be learning a little bit as you're interfacing with your clients. The more you get them to clearly give you that feedback in real time, the better and better you're going to get. And sure enough, there are times as you get more experience where you can pick up subtle aspects and change your pressure to where it feels like it's just right. You don't have to interface nearly as often, particularly as you even just learn an individual person. After you've seen a client for a few years, you really kind of have a gauge on what's the ideal pressure for them. But make sure you're just checking in with them. Easiest thing for your brain.
And a good hurt, a good sensation, a good intensity of a sensation should mimic their symptom. So if I'm working along a leg or whatever, and again, you've got to communicate with this, you've got to retrain them to that, and I'm going to say, now if I come across, I'm going to sift through all the tissues, I'm going to move it around, I'm going to, see what's going on. If I come across an area that mimics the symptom you're having in your knee, or in your shoulder, or in your back, or whatever, let me know. If it is anything else other than something that's mimicking your symptom, I need to change what I'm doing. I've gotten pokey or something. Because you'll get into this idea of, well, it hurts, so it must be something. Yeah, the something is that I'm poking you. That, right? It isn't because there's something wrong. It's something wrong in the delivery of the massage. Has anybody had that where you've gotten a massage, and they're hurting you, it's something, whatever, it's not your spot, but they keep working on it because you said, ooh, it hurts there. Or had somebody say, I'm talking to the ones that are more experienced here, had somebody say, well, it hurts, so it must be something. Have you had that? And you gotta stop right now and say, no, it's not something unless it mimics your sensation that you've been experiencing. That, I need to change what I'm doing. I need to change it. So, a lot of people are enduring a massage because there's lack of sensitivity in what's going on. Again, you don't lighten up. Firm, broad-based, moderate to firm, broad-based pressure is what's mimicking this reflex to, that's anti-arousal, the squeeze machine I talked about.
And some of that too, if I was gonna pick an intervention, usually something more just relaxation, stress management based, the client's gonna ideally want something where they're laying there more passively.
Yep.
That's part of it too. Something that's much more therapeutic, like medical sport. There may do more active movement in the session. So if I were to give you a good assessment procedure for even when you come across a sensitive area during a relaxation-based massage, it's the position of release as your initial go-to for intervention. If I'm gonna have somebody do anything and the outcome is anti-arousal relaxation, if I find something, one, I need to be aware that I'm have my body mechanics and everything set just right. But if I have somebody use positional release, which is just shift their body around enough to where although I have stayed on the area that is sensitive, they make it hurt less. So they're shifting, they're changing the shape of the tissue, and then they move back out of it. That's a key aspect of even how like trigger point therapy is used. The safety piece of this too is that if you can sustain compression in the spot and they can move in such a way that decreases the symptom, it's soft tissue. So it's also an underlying assessment procedure where if you find things and you're learning, you're trying to figure out, hey, is this actually something worth working on that's soft tissue related? If a person can move their body in such a way that they can decrease that sensitivity, that's a good indicator that it's okay for you to work on it. But as they have moved into that position of making it less hurty, that's also its own intervention. Because now they've shifted out of an arousal mechanism of it hurting too much, they can move back out of it. You can get a real-time assessment of did it actually produce anything. So if you're gonna pick one of these fancy muscle technique interventions that interfaces well with relaxation, positional release. And it's really one of the best strategies to go with from the get-go, anyway, because it's so safe.
And that will be one of the things that we explain a little bit with when we move into the concept of stress management and specifically for symptomology. You want to work from the least invasive, the simplest, the most basic, you know, instead of diving in. And, you know, I was trained on the idea of seek and destroy. You know, and I have had to learn over and over that that's not the way to do it. Do we need to?
Yeah, we're gonna do just a pause. That's a good place to pause it. So, all right, going on to part 2.